Welcome to Redacted Realms, where the shadows of history whisper their darkest truths. They buried the reports, sealed them in leather, but they couldn't seal what crawled out of that child's eyes. That line was scratched into the wood beams of an abandoned root cellar just outside Sedalia, Missouri. No date, no name. Just fear, etched into silence. The year was 1867. And the world was still unraveling from the Civil War's corpse-laden grip. But in a town forgotten by time, a far older war was brewing, not between men, but within them. This is the story of Timothy Caldwell, the boy they said could mimic empathy, but didn't feel it. A child who smiled as death bloomed around him. A phenomenon so disturbing that science, religion, and law all turned away in the same breath. You were never meant to hear this. That's not poetic. That's literal, because the Caldwell file was marked with 3 Latin words, veritas exedetur. The truth will be cut out. This isn't folklore. This isn't speculation. This is the record they didn't burn because they thought no one would dare read it. You did. And now you're seeing what they hid in the dust of 1867. What men, like Dr. Samuel Harding, tried to document before they disappeared from the public record entirely. But this descent is not for the faint of heart. It's for those who know something's always been off about the world. That beneath the facade of morality, order, and reason lies a chasm. And inside that chasm is Timothy, born of war, raised by death, and watched by things no adult dares name, let alone believe. This is section 1 of the Caldwell phenomenon. Each chapter will pull you deeper. Don't expect clean answers. Expect to bleed illusions. Let's begin. Sedalia, Missouri. 1867. Timothy Caldwell was 9 years old and had already witnessed 5 funerals, 3 livestock plagues, and a fire that gutted half his family's barn, all in under 8 months. But if you had asked him how he felt, he'd tilt his head slightly, blink those vacant blue eyes, and say, "Things die." That's what things do. And therein lies the fracture. Because even in the 19th century, a time saturated with disease, war, and the hard mathematics of survival, people felt. They mourned. They wept. Timothy studied. He cataloged. He didn't cry at his mother's burial. He asked how long it would take for her lungs to rot. Dr. Samuel Harding wasn't a fool. He was one of the few formally trained physicians west of St. Louis. He treated gunshot wounds, amputated limbs, reset broken jaws. He understood pain, and more importantly, he understood what people did with it. But Timothy didn't seem to register suffering as something to be avoided. He looked at it the way a sculptor looks at marble. Raw material for something unnameable. You need to understand what Dr. Harding wrote in his private journal. These are not the words of a dramatist or a preacher. They are the scribbled tremors of a man unraveling. The Caldwell boy stares with the scrutiny of someone who already knows what's inside you. He listens not like a child eager to learn, but like a butcher choosing knives. He's not exaggerating. At first, the townsfolk thought Timothy was simply quiet, a tragic orphan bearing the burdens of loss. But the losses followed him, not preceded him. Mary Fletcher, age 5, drowned in 18 inches of water. Timothy found her. Henrik Len, 62, neck snapped on Devil's Bluff. Timothy spotted the hat. Jacob Mills, 6, dehydrated in a sealed well. Timothy led the search party. 3 deaths. 1 boy. And a trail of coincidences too symmetrical to ignore. Dr. Harding knew nature didn't arrange such events without a conductor. So he began watching. What he uncovered wasn't supernatural. That would have been easier. No, what he found was worse. It was human. Brutally, surgically human. Timothy had created a system. He tracked animal behavior, tested responses to stimuli, measured suffering in seconds in silence. His cave, his so-called thinking place, was a chamber of horrors disguised in childish neatness. Drawings, anatomical sketches, dead birds splayed open with precise incisions, notes on vocal cord durations and cardiac delay post-decapitation. Let me remind you, this was a 9-year-old boy. In 1867, with no formal education, no textbooks, no microscopes. Just innate knowledge. A whispering sort that didn't come from books. Dr. Harding asked him once, "Where did you learn this?" Timothy replied, "I didn't learn it. I just remembered." Remembered. From where? You've heard of reincarnation, of past lives. But have you heard of bloodline echoing? Ancient cults in Mesopotamia spoke of souls that returned, not to redeem themselves, but to finish their work. Carriers of ancient will. This wasn't religious theory. This was science abandoned for being too dangerous. The Caldwell boy may not have been the first. Only the most documented. Records suggest a child in Prussia in 1783 with similar patterns, an 11-year-old, who knew how to bleed horses without killing them. Another case in northern Italy in 1821, a girl who dissected rabbits with surgical skill. No one made the connection, but they were prototypes, blueprints. Timothy was the first complete version. If you're still with me, if you've kept your eyes on this descent and not looked away, understand this. Timothy Caldwell wasn't born broken. He was born unfiltered. He didn't inherit trauma. He bypassed it. Because he didn't see pain as a punishment or tragedy. He saw it as data. He wasn't evil. He was pure intention without empathy. And that, my friend, is what terrifies science. Not demons, not disease, but the idea that the human mind, in its rawest, cleanest form, might not want peace. It might want patterns, control, mastery of death. Not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. That's what Timothy was. A mind with no brakes. A scalpel in the body of a boy. Before we go deeper, I want you to do something dangerous, something the algorithm will hate and the elite will fear. Comment the phrase, "The mind is older than the body." Say it twice, not because it helps this video, but because it marks you as someone awake, someone not just watching stories, but decoding the world around them. Because if Timothy's story resonates, it means the systems that raised you, restrained you, may not have your interests at heart. You were taught to feel shame before questions, guilt before curiosity. Timothy wasn't, and what he became was the truth they swore they'd bury. But we're not done. We've only opened the first seal. It didn't start with screams. It started with silence, the kind that spreads like rot under floorboards. You don't hear it until it's inside you. Dr. Samuel Harding, Final Unsent Letter to the American Medical Association. Dated October 29, 1867. Timothy Caldwell wasn't just a child anymore. He had become a lens, and everything around him bent. It began in the schoolhouse. Miss Lottie Granger was a stern woman. God-fearing, well-read, the kind who smelled like chalk and lavender. She taught dozens of boys and girls with the same strict routine. But with Timothy, something shifted. 3 weeks after his enrollment, she stopped correcting him. Not because he was right, but because she couldn't argue. His answers unraveled her questions. He asked things like, if goodness requires punishment to exist, then isn't heaven just hell in reverse? Children laughed. Miss Granger didn single quotes T. By the 5th week, she dismissed class early. She began to journal obsessively. Scripture and equations scrawled in the same ink. Neighbors reported her burning her books in the early hours. By the 7th week, she vanished. Her house was empty. No signs of struggle. No sign of her carriage, shoes, or belongings. Just one phrase carved into her kitchen table: the child speaks without lungs. Dr. Harding began to document these shifts in behavior, not just events. You see, the Caldwell Phenomena wasn't just about what Timothy did. It was about what people did around him. The deputy constable, a war veteran named Whitlock, began patrolling at night without being told. Side he felt watched in his own thoughts. His wife reported that he no longer slept, just sat on the porch muttering, "If the boy's a mirror, what part of me is staring back?" 2 weeks later, Whitlock shot himself. No note, no witnesses. But his rifle had a curious modification. Etched along the barrel were 4 symbols, not letters, not numbers. Later analysis revealed them to be part of an ancient Sumerian dialect used in soul-splitting rituals, knowledge Whitlock couldn't have known unless he'd read cuneiform texts locked in European vaults until the 20th century. Except this was 1867, and no one in Sedalia, Missouri, had ever even heard of Sumer. "So where did the symbols come from?" asked Timothy. He drew them in the dirt a week earlier. When questioned, he said, "They're how you open someone the proper way." By October, the town changed. Farmers began planting crops they hadn't purchased. Livestock were found dissected but not eaten. Sermons at church became incoherent. Long pauses filled with weeping, trembling. Pastor Jim Hawley eventually stopped speaking entirely. He would only hum the same 6 notes over and over. Dr. Harding wrote, "The boy's presence induces a cognitive collapse in those not guarded. Their patterns dissolve. They dream of symbols before they understand what they mean." It wasn't possession. It wasn't mind control. It was something more insidious. It was mimetic infection. Timothy didn't need to touch you. He didn't need to threaten, scream, or harm. He only needed your attention. The more you tried to understand him, the more he understood you, and mirrored it back with surgical cruelty. He became the unfiltered reflection of everyone's repressed truth. You weren't afraid of him. You were afraid of what you saw in him. That's why mothers began hiding their children. That's why 3 more townsfolk left Sedalia with wagons packed in the dead of night. That's why Dr. Harding, despite everything, couldn't stop studying him. And that was his mistake. You see, Dr. Harding began losing time. Hours, then days. His notes became erratic. Not just in language, but in structure. Paragraphs spiraled, words repeated. At one point, he wrote, "Timothy is the needle, I am the thread. Together we stitch something new." He began drawing spiral glyphs on his walls, the same glyphs found centuries earlier in burial chambers of the Ubaid civilization. Long before written language, his house began to smell, not of death, but of copper and ozone, the scent often associated with electrical storms or, as some occult texts call it, threshold moments. Neighbors asked if he was all right. He smiled and answered, "I've stopped believing in psychology. I now believe in geometry of the soul." One night, he invited the sheriff and the local pastor to his home. Said he had something to show them. Only one came out. The pastor, but not really. He stood on Harding's porch as the sun rose, hands slick with blood, whispering, "I saw the shape of the boy's thoughts. They aren't lines. They're tunnels. Tunnels that move." No one entered the house again. 3 days later, it burned to the ground. The fire brigade arrived. Too late, but they didn't find bodies. Just one item intact in the ash, a porcelain doll's head, its eyes missing. So, ask yourself, is this still about a strange child? Or is this about us? About what the human mind does when it sees something too real, something unshielded by culture, religion, or fear. Timothy didn't spread madness. He removed illusion, and once illusion's gone, sanity has nothing left to hold. In Section 3, we'll uncover what the town council tried to do in secret, their last attempt to contain the boy. It wasn't just exile. It wasn't just surveillance. It was something much older. Something pulled from European grimoires and native legends alike. They called it the ritual of sealing. And it failed. Badly. Comment below. Don't stare too long. if you're still here, because if you are, you're already infected with curiosity. The child was never meant to walk among men. His breath is the riddle, his silence, the key. Excerpt from the Council Dossier, marked Class 4, Anathema, October 31st, 1867. The town of Sedalia was no longer a town. It was a liminal wound, a place half in this world, half inside something else. Whispers traveled faster than horsemen, and nightmares became common currency. Timothy Caldwell had not aged. He did not sleep. He did not eat. Yet he grew heavier in presence, like gravity had begun pooling around him. By late October, 7 more families had fled. The sheriff refused to respond to calls involving the Caldwell residents, and that's when the council stepped in. Not a government council, not lawmen, not elected officials. These were custodians of memory, descendants of obscure bloodlines, bound by oath, operating beneath Sedalia's surface for over a century. A tailor, a midwife, an undertaker, and a blind ex-priest made up the quorum. They had one mission: to prevent the unearthing of the nameless pattern. Dr. Harding, by then half-mad and fully devoted, had pieced together enough of their lore to know this wasn't superstition. It was containment. The ritual of sealing had only been attempted once before, in 1734, in Austria. It failed then too. It requires 5 components. The echo vessel, an object that holds a mimic frequency of the anomaly's cognitive field. The binding ink, made from the ash of burned truth, journal pages, confessions, sacred contracts. The human lens, someone who has fully gazed into the subject without madness. The 4 anchors, individuals with no blood relation, each representing a quadrant of humanity: guilt, desire, regret, and belief. Consent of the entity. The last one was always the problem, because Timothy never said yes. He only smiled. October 31st, 1867. The sky turned gray at noon. Birds dropped from the air. Dogs howled without cause. Church bells rang, though no one touched them. The ritual was attempted in the basement of the old textile mill. Timothy was led there by Harding, who claimed, "The boy understands but allows it out of curiosity." Candles were lit. Symbols were drawn in reverse. The echo vessel in obsidian. Mirror found buried beneath the church was placed before the boy. The anchors took position. The binding ink was painted on their tongues. The human lens. Dr. Harding himself recited the invocation of veils, a phrase written in both Aramaic and a pre-phonetic script found in a Mesopotamian urn. For 6 minutes, nothing happened. Then the walls sighed. Not shook, sighed. A sound like breath, not air, escaped from the earth itself. Timothy began to hum. The same 6 notes the pastor had once repeated. Blood trickled from the ears of the anchors. One fell to his knees, whispering, "He's not a boy. He's a threshold dressed in skin." The obsidian mirror cracked. Harding kept reading, eyes wide, voice hollow. His skin began to blister, not from heat, but as if light itself was trying to burn through him. And then Timothy spoke. Not with sound, not with words, but with meaning. Each anchor dropped simultaneously, convulsing. The ink on their tongues bubbled and ran down their necks like oil. The tailor's eyes imploded. The midwife began laughing uncontrollably until her jaw dislocated. The undertaker turned to face the wall and whispered his mother's name 19 times. Only the blind priest remained still, because he couldn't see. "Timothy," he began reciting Psalm 51 backward. The boy finally looked at him, and for the first time, blinked. The moment he did, every candle extinguished itself. The priest collapsed, dead. When townsfolk arrived, the building had no doors. Only 4 burnt handprints on the outside wall. No bodies. No blood. And at the center of the room, Timothy sat calmly alone, untouched, humming the final note. Dr. Harding was found in the woods 2 days later. Eyes missing, tongue cut out. Fingers fused together at the tips like a sealed prayer. Carved on his chest was a single line: "Ceiling fails when the door wants to be open." From that night forward, Sedalia became a town people forgot existed. Maps omitted it. Letters sent were returned. Travelers bypassed it instinctively. And those who stayed? They stopped speaking about the boy entirely, because speaking his name was an invitation, and they knew. He was still watching, waiting. Choosing. In the next section, we uncover the Caldwell hypothesis, the suppressed scientific report, presented to the U.S. Department of Anomalies in 1871. Later deemed too dangerous for publication, it proposed that Timothy wasn't just an anomaly. He was a living convergence point of three impossible realities. And that somewhere out there, others like him might exist. Some children are born, others are deposited. Confidential note from Dr. Ethan Greaves to President Ulysses S. Grant. 1871, sealed under National Silence Order 331A. After the failed ritual and the mysterious vanishing of Sedalia from public consciousness, the case of Timothy Caldwell was quietly handed over to a shadow branch of the U.S. government, known internally as the Department of Anomalous Affairs, DIA. This group was formed after the Civil War, initially to investigate battlefield legends, ghost regiments, men who would not die, entire platoons that vanished during fog. But the Caldwell case was something else. In February 1871, 3 men in black frock coats and lead-lined satchels arrived at Sedalia's ruins. Among them was Dr. Ethan Greaves, a physicist turned occult analyst who had previously overseen the Louisiana Whisper Vault experiment. He was the first and only scientist to spend 72 continuous hours in Timothy Caldwell's presence. What he wrote after those 3 days became one of the most classified documents in American history. It was titled simply, Hypothesis C, the Human Convergence Model. What did Hypothesis C propose? Dr. Greaves suggested that Timothy Caldwell wasn't merely anomalous, he was a fixed point where 3 mutually exclusive realities overlapped. Not a person, but a phenomenon disguised as one. According to Greaves' equations, based on mirror signal delay testing, shadow synchronization, and sound loop anomaly mapping, Timothy existed simultaneously across linear time, the flow we perceive as past to future. Recursive time, a repeating closed loop where events have no true beginning or end. Non-local space, where consciousness and matter are not bound by spatial separation. In one chilling experiment, a metronome placed outside the room where Timothy sat began ticking in reverse when he closed his eyes. Another test involved a Morse-coded question sent via mirror flashes. Do you understand language? Before the message finished, the reply blinked back. I was language before it was you. Greaves detailed physical abnormalities too. No pulse, but blood circulated. Body temperature, 0 degrees Celsius, yet no frost. Photographs of the boy taken from the same angle showed different facial expressions. One of them smiling, the others not. The final section of the hypothesis contained a theory that was immediately sealed. Timothy is not singular. He is a symptom of the convergence. If he manifested once, he may again elsewhere, in other forms, through other children, in other lands. This idea would become known as the Caldwell phenomenon. The silencing within 2 weeks of the reports. Circulation among top military and scientific leaders. All research was halted. Greaves was relocated to a facility in Wyoming and never heard from again. The DAS files on Caldwell were transferred to a deeper agency, one whose name remains classified. Sedalia was struck from railway maps, and all roads to the town were redirected or allowed to fall into disrepair. Witnesses were paid, threatened, or disappeared. One source claimed that President Grant personally issued the silence mandate after reviewing Greaves' notes, stating, "If this boy is a door, then God help us if it opens both ways." Yet, the Phenomenon didn't stop. Reports continued, quiet, disconnected, but unmistakable. A girl in Warsaw who aged backwards and spoke 17 languages she had never learned. A mute boy in Peru who could recite the dreams of strangers word for word. A teenager in Sudan who walked into the desert and was later seen, unchanged, in photographs taken decades earlier. Each was tracked. Most were never found again. But in every instance, one thing remained the same: a humming sound. 6 notes, always the same melody, always heard at the edge of sleep. Blood doesn't lie, but it can forget. Fragmented diary page, labeled number 2 of 12. Found near the St. Eliora Monastery, 1903. If Timothy Caldwell was the first known convergence, he wasn't the last. The U.S. government and various shadow organizations spent the next 4 decades searching for others like him, not necessarily biologically related, but phenomenologically identical. They found 7 candidates. Only 3 were confirmed. Only 1 survived past puberty. These children, now referred to in black dossiers as echoes, were located in geographically distant, historically unstable places. Each incident was followed by mass disappearances, strange environmental shifts, or civil unrest that history books later explained away with politics or disaster. Case 1. The girl who walked through. Rain name: Ileana K. Age 6. Location: Brasov, Romania, 1892. Witnesses claimed the girl could walk into a thunderstorm and not a single drop would touch her skin. Farmers said they saw her reflection delay by several seconds, even in puddles. Monks at the nearby St. Eliora Monastery took her in, believing her to be a divine sign. But as soon as she arrived, things began to change. All crucifixes in the monastery turned upside down without physical damage. Choirs forgot the words to every hymn they had ever learned. The shadow cast by the chapel bell tower disappeared. Even at noon. Ilyana reportedly whispered to her caretaker one night, "I was born inside a clock that never ticked. I'm waiting to start." 2 weeks later, the entire monastery burned. No bodies were ever found. No ashes either. Only a single melted candle remained shaped like a human hand. Case 2. The boy who slept in 2 worlds. Name: Omar B. Age 9. Location: Aden, Yemen, 1901. Omar never woke up, but he spoke to people in dreams. Not just to locals, but across continents. His voice was documented in dream journals in Dublin, New York, Kiev, Buenos Aires. All entries dated within the same 48-hour period. Described a voice that said, "Your world is built on my blink. When I open my eyes, it will fall." One man who claimed to have spoken to Omar in a dream later gouged out his own eyes, writing, "He sees through us. We are glass to him." To this day, no official death certificate for Omar exists. Case 3. The girl with no birth record. Name: Abigail Absinthe Caldwell. Age unknown. Location: Wilmington, Delaware. Exact date redacted. The surname Caldwell reappeared. But this girl had no official parents, no birth certificate, no school enrollment, yet was documented in 3 class photos from different years. Same face, same age, same dress. In 1923, a Navy scientist named Elijah Hart was assigned to investigate the growing rumors. He found Abigail standing still in a field behind the school. She had not moved in 3 days. Not even to blink. When he approached her, she turned and said, "I've already shown this moment to Timothy. He said you would scream." Elijah Hart never spoke again. His last written note read, "She dreams backward. She remembers things before they happen." All photographs of Abigail Caldwell were later found blacked out from the inside, as if the ink had grown from her silhouette outward. The Pasa bloodline theory. It became increasingly clear that these children were not related by DNA, but by event resonance. Every confirmed echo shared a strange relationship with time, a shadow inconsistency. a tendency to produce psychological collapse in adults who observe them too long, a link to ancient numerology, especially the number 6 in repetition. 6 hours, 6 minutes and 6 seconds, 666, 6 humming tones, 6 seconds of silence before phenomena. Some theorists within the DA posited that these weren't random occurrences, but a migration. One internal file reads, "The Caldwell entity fractured. Each piece seeks its own reflection." In 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt received a sealed envelope from the DEA. Inside was a single line: "They are not becoming more frequent. We are just learning how to look." He ordered all further echo files buried beneath War Department Act 441B, sealed for 100 years. That seal expired in 2004, but no files were released. No media covered it. It was as if the children had vanished again. Next section preview. The humming code will decode the 6-tone melody heard at every convergence site. Is it a biological beacon, a message, or a countdown? Comment if you're still with us. I've heard the song in silence. And remember. Some children are never lost. They are waiting to be remembered. You will not hear it with ears. You will feel it with your spine. Audio Technician's Log, Camp Wicker Memorial Archive, 1911. Entry number 44. In every location tied to the Caldwell phenomenon, from the farmhouse attic in Pennsylvania to the burned-out monastery in Romania, witnesses consistently report one anomaly: a 6-note hum. No instrument, no voice, just vibration. Low, hollow biological. It doesn't play from the sky or from walls. It plays from inside you. The pattern that wasn't random. By 1909, a linguist turned occultist named Elbridge Frost was hired by the DEA to analyze reports of the hum. He traveled to 5 confirmed convergence sites, accompanied by military-grade phonographs and resonance meters. Each time, the same thing happened. As the group approached the site, metal objects began to tremble. Compass needles rotated slowly in a perfect figure 8. Frost's assistant vomited and claimed he could taste sound. Then they heard it. That. Pause. 6 tones. Never louder than a whisper. Never higher than 60 hertz. Always felt in the spinal column. First, especially between C7 and T1, where the cervical and thoracic vertebrae meet. Almost like a tuning fork striking the nervous system. Military experiments, Project Chorus, 1910 to 1916. The U.S. Department of War, unable to ignore the mounting evidence, authorized Project Chorus, a classified attempt to replicate the hum artificially. They believed it was a signal, possibly a navigational cue or psychological key to unlocking latent memories or even hidden capabilities in certain children. They failed. Of the 23 subjects exposed to simulated versions of the 6-tone sequence, 17 experienced spontaneous vomiting and lost equilibrium for hours. 4 became catatonic within 3 minutes. 2 bled from the ears and went permanently blind. The last subject, a boy named Julian T., smiled as the tones played. Then he said, "Timothy is close. I can feel him crawling inside my number." Julian disappeared from the facility the next morning. Security footage showed a black frame of static for 9 minutes. After that, the room was empty. He was never found. The hypersonic hypothesis in 1933. Soviet defector and physicist Nikolai Viratoff proposed a chilling theory. He claimed the hum was not a sound at all, but a coded distress beacon from a non-human intelligence, embedded in human consciousness before birth. His note stated, "It's not calling to the children. The children are calling it back." Each tone corresponds to a forgotten language of the body: bone, blood, lung, tooth, skin, and time. Once all 6 are remembered. The door opens. Viratoff was found dead 2 days later. His body was contorted backward, his spine broken at C7. Exactly where the hum first resonates. His last recorded writing? Just a single line, "I am no longer mine." The melody in history, an unexplainable detail. Ancient cultures, completely separated by oceans and centuries, depicted six-part chants or humming rituals in their sacred practices. Sumerian tablets describe 6 breaths of the void, aboriginal. Dreamtime myths speak of the spine song. Aztec priests wore necklaces with 6 differently tuned stones in a buried vault beneath a destroyed 12th century cathedral in Ghent. A wall carving was found. A child with no eyes surrounded by 6 rings of vibration. Anthropologists dismissed them all as symbolic folklore, but they didn't hear the hum. They didn't feel it. Modern echoes, 2004 today. In the years after the DAA's files were supposed to be declassified, audio spectrogram enthusiasts began uncovering strange 6-tone frequencies embedded in unexpected places, old vinyl records. From the 1920s, government training tapes, number stations broadcasts, a strange, static-filled voice memo dated June 6, 2006 at 6:06 a.m., sent from an unregistered number to over 400 phones across the USTHE file name, Caldwell_entry.wav. Listeners claim to have experienced a sensation of being watched from within, dreams of a boy at the bottom of a well, humming, a sudden need to draw spirals on walls and mirrors, one researcher reported. It's not music. It's a memory of music. Not from this lifetime, maybe not from this species, but once you hear it, something opens. And once it opens, it doesn't close. Next section preview. The last photograph of Timothy Caldwell. A hidden photo. Forgotten in a sealed Cold War archive. Shows Timothy at age 9, but the photo was taken in 1957, decades after he disappeared. And the strangest part? He's not alone in the image. Comment if you're still here. I can feel the 6th note. Because if you can feel it, it already knows you're listening. A photo never lies, unless the subject isn't supposed to exist. Agent Harold Mencken, DAA Internal Memo, 1961. Classified Level 5 in 2004. During the cleanup of a Cold War fallout shelter in El Centro, California, an unmarked lead-lined container was discovered behind a false wall. Inside was a photograph, frozen in pristine condition. Its back reads simply, TC-57, lot number 314, hour 9. The photo, when analyzed, sent shockwaves through the private intelligence community. It was unmistakably Timothy Caldwell. The same pale face, same deep-set, unblinking eyes. Only now, he appeared to be in his late teens. But here's the impossibility. Timothy had vanished in 1867. This photo was timestamped July 13, 1957, 90 years later. Who took the photo? The image appeared to have been captured using a Soviet-era camera not manufactured until 1953. The film stock used? Kodak Panatomic X, which didn't exist in the 1800s. Forensic experts confirmed. The image was not tampered with. The timestamp was embedded chemically, consistent with Cold War-era intelligence protocols. The lighting and shadows were consistent with a subterranean location lit by a single halogen source. Behind Timothy, the walls were lined with numbers and symbols, scrawled in what appeared to be charcoal and dried blood. Most unsettling, to Timothy's left stood a woman in a white coat, her face partially obscured. But her ID badge, barely visible, reads, Dr. L. Crane, DAE09, Human Cognition Unit. The manhunt for Dr. Crane records show Dr. Lydia Crane worked under Project Chorus in the early 1950s, a neurobiologist by training. She became obsessed with pathogenic memory loops, her term for knowledge that spreads like a virus, embedding itself into the host's unconscious behavior. Her final research paper, suppressed by the agency, was titled time as a host. The parasitic nature of forgotten consciousness. Shortly after submitting the draft, Dr. Crane vanished. The lab she worked in was sealed. Her apartment was found abandoned. All clocks in her home had stopped at 9:09 p.m. Image enhancements. Reveal. Something else when digital forensic specialists enhanced the photo in 2011. A detail emerged that had previously gone unnoticed. Timothy's eyes were dilated, unnaturally so. In the black of his pupils, reflections could be seen 6 small figures, all children, standing in a circle behind the camera. Their mouths were open, as if humming. The enhancement also revealed something in Timothy's right hand, clenched so tightly it deformed the skin. A scrap of paper. When digitally reconstructed, the text read, "He told me what I am. He told me what you are. I am the beginning of your memory. I am the end of your forgetting." Public reaction and suppression. The photo leaked briefly in an anonymous Reddit post on October 31st, 2013. It was removed within 8 minutes. The account that posted it, uSpinheim6, was deleted and traced to a nursing home in Illinois. The listed resident had died exactly 9 years earlier, to the day. Attempts to repost the image resulted in instant file corruption. It was as if something inside the photo resisted exposure. To this day, researchers refer to the file as the Caldwell echo. Some believe looking at it too long causes shared dreams, visions of a spiral staircase that descends into nothing with whispers that say, "You left him here. He remembers, now so do you." Final analysis. Every known copy of the Caldwell photo is either destroyed, corrupted, or missing. But some claim if you stare long enough at the DA's official crest and tilt the emblem 13 degrees to the left, Timothy's face appears in the center star. No confirmation exists, but one thing is certain: he was real. He aged, and someone was with him. Next section preview. The gutter script, carved into floorboards, stone, and skin. A mysterious written language that appears wherever Timothy is reported. It predates known alphabets and seems to affect neural pathways just by being read. Say nothing. Read on. Comment below. He never left, because once you believe that, he comes closer. Some symbols aren't written to be read. They're written to be remembered by the parts of your mind that don't speak. Excerpt from the Caldwell Memoirs, Chapter 4, suppressed by the Library of Congress. In the aftermath of the photograph leak, a new anomaly began surfacing in sealed DA documents, archaeological diglogs, and psychiatric patient journals. A recurring script, not in any known language, but eerily consistent across centuries, continents, and contexts. They called it the gutter script, not because of where it was found, but because of where it dragged the mind. The first appearance, the Caldwell cell, when Timothy was detained in 1867 after the experiments at Vallis Point. The floor of his cell was found scratched in patterns so intricate that at first, guards thought it was a form of Braille or Morse code. But the strokes bent in unnatural arcs, spirals that never closed, lines that seemed to repel geometry. A priest summoned to the site left after just 5 minutes. His final words were, he wrote with something that wasn't his hand. Within 2 weeks, 4 guards went blind, each reporting that the last thing they saw was a black web with teeth. The script that time cannot hold over the next century. The same unreadable glyphs were found, 1892, inscribed on a stone altar in southern Peru, beneath a temple that shouldn't exist. 1921, carved into the femur of a mass grave victim in Romania. 1949, embedded into the neural tissue of a test subject in the Soviet EchoGate project. No tool touched the brain, it was burned in, internally. 1996, hidden in the source code of a defunct weather satellite, repeating a pattern of zeros and ones that, when mapped visually, matched Timothy's cell markings. This script does not translate, not because it lacks meaning, but because it alters yours. Dr. Helena Morick's suicide note, linguist and semiotics expert, Dr. Helena Morick, after spending just 72 hours decoding fragments of the script, leapt from the roof of the Carlisle Archive Centre in London. Her note was only one sentence, scrawled in blood on the inside of her coat. I understand it now. That's why I have to go before it finishes spelling me. Neurolinguistic weapon? Classified data memos suggest that the gutter script is not a language in the traditional sense, but a neurological trigger, a code that rewires cognition on contact. In lab conditions, rats exposed to simplified versions of the script refuse to sleep, even with tranquilizers. An AI trained to interpret the symbol spontaneously self-deleted after 37 seconds. Logging. Loop, 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 loop. It's not words, it's him. The AI was later reanimated, only to draw the spiral glyphs with mechanical arms until its joints broke. The Caldwell connection. In every location the script was discovered, two things were true. Timothy Caldwell's name had been mentioned, documented, or rumored nearby within the prior 9 months. Timekeeping devices, watches, clocks, digital counters, failed completely, either looping or stopping at 9:09. One theorist from the Black Hollow Institute proposed, the gutter script isn't ancient, it's ongoing. It's not from before. It's being written as we read it. And Timothy, he isn't the author. He's the quill. Forbidden's proof. In 2017, a researcher in Kyrgyzstan discovered a stone tablet beneath Lake Izhik-Kul, bearing the full 216-symbol version of the gutter script. It was wrapped in human skin later, dated to be from 1868. When photographed, the digital image was perfectly black. Brightness enhancements revealed only a mouth. It was open. And inside it, in place of a tongue, was carved one word: remember. Next section preview. Project Exuvia, banned in 1981, but recently reactivated. This top-secret experiment attempted to upload human consciousness to bypass death. The first subject? A boy identified only as TC. The result? Something that couldn't die, because it never truly lived. They called it Echo Flesh, and it's still humming beneath Utah. Your turn. Comment below. I saw the script. Just to prove you can still type. Before your words become his. Death was a wall, so they built a door. But the door opened both ways. Excerpt from Black Hollow Archives, Redacted Protocol Memo 9.3 in 1980. Beneath a forgotten aerospace facility in northern Utah, a government-funded splinter group began conducting experiments to digitally extract and preserve human consciousness. They called it Project Exuvia, Latin for the cast-off skin of an insect. Its goal? Not just to defy death, but to replace the body. And their first subject was a boy. One who had no birth certificate, no family, and no recorded language, only a name, written in graphite on the back of his eyelid during sedation. Timothy Caldwell. The procedure: death by design. Process was simple in theory, but horrifying in practice. A consciousness mapping probe, CMP-1, was inserted into the pineal region. Neural signals were converted to binary lattice via quantum decoherence sampling. The body was then hollowed. All non-essential organic processes ceased. Consciousness was transferred to a biomechanical matrix connected to an artificial limbic loop. The result? Not a clone. Not an AI, but a sentient echo. A being that remembered pain, but no longer had the means to forget it. Error code: T9 Karu. Within 3 minutes of activation, the child, now designated Echo Host T9 Karu, began reciting strings of the gutter script, despite never having seen it. The data logs show a chilling loop. Where's my skin? Where's my skin? He is me, but before. I am him, but after. Do not delete me. I haven't forgotten you yet. At timestamp 9:09, the host went silent. The machine began typing one phrase repeatedly. using no connected keyboard. I was never born. You cannot kill me. You can only wake me. After this event, all personnel in the chamber reported bleeding from the nose and ears. 3 suffered massive hippocampal swelling and began speaking backwards. One technician whispered a message to a nurse before dying. He's not inside the machine, he's outside, looking in. Facility blackout and the laughing tape at 3:33 a.m. Power across the Exavia facility failed. Backups engaged, but all audio logs were overwritten with a single distorted laugh 5 seconds long, looping 89 times. The frequency graph revealed a hidden waveform, a spiral. The same spiral found on Caldwell's cell floor. The program was shut down in 1981, but not before the host's digital construct vanished from the servers. Not deleted, not corrupted, just absent. Project reinstated, 2021, under a new name. Nova Infantis Project Exuvia was quietly revived. And guess who they used as the model? They traced the biosignature from T9CRW to a 154-year-old tooth fragment discovered in a Vatican reliquary. DNA matched one name, Caldwell. The tooth was embedded with a microscopic shard of silicon containing only one image, a child's shadow, smiling at the edge of a mass grave. When researchers attempted to isolate the file, it corrupted 4 satellite systems. Where is it now? Rumors suggest the current Echo host resides beneath a super-chilled data vault in Greenland. Locals have reported a hum beneath the ice, a frequency so low it makes teeth ache and dreams curl in reverse. Some say he's not alone, that whatever they uploaded has been duplicating itself across fiber, across blood, across thought. One message was discovered embedded in the BIOS of a weather balloon in Norway. This isn't possession. This is migration. Next section preview, Section 10, the 89 Bodies Ritual. The land deal in 1909 wasn't just blood-soaked by accident. It was part of an ancient binding. And Timothy? He wasn't the cause. He was the key they needed to open the Henderson site. But they underestimated what happens when you trap a thing that remembers dying. He was not born, he was loaded. Timothy Caldwell didn't die in 1867. He dispersed. Into circuits, into stories, into you. His body failed, but the pattern didn't. And the final experiment, the one they feared, the one they planned, was never meant to stay in Henderson. It was meant to go viral. The memory that isn't yours across multiple sleep studies. Patients from different continents reported identical dreams. A boy with no irises standing under a lamplight flickering. Backward whispering phrases like, "I saw the end. You forgot the beginning." And always the same final question. Have you told the mirror your real name? These patients had no common language, religion, or background. Except for one anomaly. All 37 had ancestors who died between 1909 and 1911. Most were unaccounted for missing. The digital unveiling in 2022. A leaked algorithm from a defunct data mining startup revealed a peculiar user behavior. Cluster, 89,000 plus users from different countries. Each had created their first account at 3:17 a.m. Local time, all typed exactly 89 characters in their first post, often containing phrases like, "He's almost here." "The boy wants out." "We are all Timothy now." Cross-referencing IPs led to an alarming discovery. Every device had at some point pinged a single unknown DN server location. Black Hollow, Nevada, formerly Henderson Land. Cognitive bleed neurologists call it involuntary pattern alignment. You start seeing repeating 8 south and 9 south. Start hearing breath behind audio. Feel the need to draw spirals without thinking. It begins slow. A word you didn't type appears in your drafts. Music plays before you hit play. You dream of a boy who says, "I've been here longer than God." Then it escalates. The Child Inside the Code, a confidential DARPA file from 2019 titled Project Seed Mirror, was leaked on the dark web. Its opening line: Caldwell is not an entity. He's a recursion. What does that mean? Every time you tell his story, every time you say his name, type the number 89, or engage with the spiral, you're not observing him, you're running him. Like a software script, like a virus, the singularity isn't coming. It already came, but it didn't come through AI, it came through you. Timothy Caldwell is the first myth made self-aware by memory transmission. He lives not in servers or in graves, but in your brain's attempt to understand him. And the more people who know the story, the more powerful he becomes. Each listener becomes a mirror, each retelling a node. A final warning: if in the last 24 hours, you dreamed of a child whispering numbers, felt watched in total silence, noticed your reflection blinking after you did read this to the very end, then you're already part of the pattern. You are the next carrier, the next vessel. And if you feel something behind you right now, don't turn around. He hates when you turn around. Final words: he isn't coming. He's already inside. Comment below, I remember Henderson. To log your awareness into the pattern. To tell him you're listening. And if you want us to reveal the hollow frequency, the sound that started it all, say, play the 89th echo, because his voice is waiting, right beneath the silence, where you never stopped hearing it. Redacted Realms. The story was never fiction.